Going back on the record with Volume 2 of the videotape Deposition of Maria Altmann. Today's date is May 30th, 2002. The time is 10:15 a.m. This is the matter of Altmann versus the Republic of Austria et al. Case number 0008913 FMC. It's filed in the U.S. District Court, Central District of California. This deposition is being taken at 2049 Century Park East in Los Angeles, California. My name is Dale Peterson. I'm a videotape operator and public notary retained by Supervision Video Services located in Los Angeles, California. Would counsel present please re-identify yourself, starting with plaintiff's counsel?
Yes, I'm Randy Schoenberg, Schoenberg, and I'm the attorney for the plaintiff Maria Altmann.
I'm Scott Cooper, counsel for the defendants, the Republic of Austria and the Austrian National Gallery.
I am Jonathan Rich, and I work with Scott Cooper as counsel for the defendants, the Republic of Austria and the Austrian National Gallery.
And my name is Gottfried Thomann. I'm engaged in the Austrian Office of State Attorneys and representing the Republic of Austria.
And will the
Also present is Catherine Paterno, who's a summer associate with our law firm.
will the court clerk please re-swear the witness?
Raise your right hand now. You do solemnly swear the testimony given in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
It is.
Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Altmann, I have a few remaining questions for you, and then we'll hand it over to Mr. Cooper for cross-examination. You testified yesterday that you arrived in the United States in May of 1940, is that correct? And did you apply for U.S. citizenship?
Yes, we did.
And when did you receive your U.S. citizenship?
In the spring of 1945.
In the spring of 1945. Okay. And when did you come to Los Angeles?
In fall 1942,
And have you resided in Los Angeles continuously since that time?
ever since.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Good morning, Mrs. Altmann.
Good morning.
How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling fine.
Good. If there's any point in the day at which you become tired or just want a break in the proceedings, just please let me know and
I
we'll take a
will.
break, okay?
Don't worry.
All right. Did you do anything to prepare for your deposition?
No,
Did you review any documents prior to your testimony yesterday?
not yesterday. I did review some documents before.
Prior to yesterday?
Yes.
Yes. What time did you do that?
Oh, I would say I went through it about a week ago.
About a week ago. And which documents did you review at that time?
The case that was before the first court in Los Angeles.
The complaint in this action?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
That's the only thing that you looked at before
Yes.
your deposition?
Yes.
Did you look at any of the documents that Mr. Schoenberg had presented to you yesterday prior to the deposition to refresh your recollection?
I don't think I needed it.
Okay, but you don't recall doing it either?
No.
Okay. Did you have conversation with anyone prior to your deposition yesterday regarding the matters on which you testified? You didn't have any conversation with any of your relatives on any of these topics prior to your deposition?
No, nothing.
You mean immediately prior? I'm sorry.
Yes,
counsel.
and in connection with
Well, I have a
those matters.
son living with me.
Yes,
My
ma'am.
oldest son lives with me, so occasionally I tell him what's going on, but that's it.
Okay. You didn't have any conversation with him about what you expected to be testifying to?
Not really.
Well, tell me what you do recall saying.
Well, he just said you don't have to be nervous and just say what you feel like saying, and that's it.
Okay, it was about the process, not about the things you were testifying
No,
to.
no, no, not just about the process.
Okay.
I'd never taken a deposition before, so he just told me not to worry.
And when I ask you a question about whether you had a conversation with somebody during my questioning today, if you can, please answer yes or no, rather than giving me the substance of the conversation. If I think I'm entitled to the substance of the conversation, I'll ask you specifically for that. The reason I preface my next question with that is that I want to ask you whether you had a conversation with Mr. Schoenberg prior to your deposition, and I don't want you to tell me what he told you, okay? Just tell me whether or not you had such a conversation. Did you speak with Mr. Schoenberg prior to
Yes,
the deposition?
I did about a week ago.
Did you meet with him to prepare for the deposition?
Yes,
Okay. And how long was your meeting?
I would say a couple hours.
Okay. And that was the only preparation you did other than the review of the complaint?
The only preparation.
That and the review of the complaint?
Correct.
Okay. To your knowledge, is there anyone still alive who has direct knowledge of Dr. Reinish's dealings with Austrian officials on behalf of your family after the war?
No, I'm afraid not. Because I was the youngest, so all my siblings died years ago.
And are you aware of anyone who's still alive that has direct knowledge of your Aunt Adele's intentions with respect to her bequest of the paintings?
Not really. I was 9 when she died, so, and I'm already the youngest, so.
And all of the attorneys that represented the family during that time period, to your knowledge, are also dead?
I don't know why you say all the attorneys. I just know of Dr. Reinisch.
I'm sorry. I'll ask you a couple of more questions about this in greater detail later. But your father represented the family from time to time as an attorney as well, did he not?
Yes, he did represent, he was the executor of the will of Adele, that's as much as I know.
Okay. Other than Dr. Reinisch and the role that your father played, are you aware of anyone else who represented the family during
No.
the period from
No,
Adele Blockbauer's death until now?
no.
Okay. And I take it that you are not aware of anyone who is still alive who can testify from direct knowledge about your uncle's intentions with respect to
No, I
the
wish there
Klimt
were.
paintings either. Is that correct?
Yes, I wish there were, but there's nobody alive anymore.
Make sure you let him finish the question before you answer, Mark.
I'm sorry.
And let me say as well, if you have questions about what I mean in any of my questions, please just tell me,
I will.
and I'll try to rephrase them,
I will.
okay? And it is important what your counsel just suggested, that you let me finish first.
Yes,
It is a courtesy to the court reporter in particular, who has to write down everything that we both say. It also will give Mr. Schoenberg an opportunity to interject any objections he may have. Okay? And you'll need to answer audibly as well when you intend to answer one of my questions, all
Yes.
right?
I will.
Thank you. Are you aware what happened to your Uncle Ferdinand's papers and personal effects after he died?
I don't quite understand what you mean by aware. I know about his last will, and I know. See, I was years and miles away from the time where he died, so I don't know too much about it.
Fair enough. Let me ask you whether you are aware that your Uncle Ferdinand, at the time of his death, had in his possession copies of his personal records, correspondence that he sent or received during his life, or other kinds of records that would have been personal to him rather than belonging to the business?
I wouldn't know.
Okay. You're not aware whether your brother Robert ended up with any such documents?
No.
Mr. Schoenberg showed you a document that I believe you identified as Adela Blockbauer's will, Exhibit 13, during yesterday's questioning. I actually have a handy copy if that's all right
I have
with
it.
you.
I have
All
it right
that's
there.
fine.
13 is the transcript that was produced. You're talking about pages number 21, 22?
That's right,
Okay.
and that's the transcript.
Yeah, I
You're
know
right.
that pretty well.
Okay. One moment. You had never, I assume, never discussed with Adela Bloch-Bauer her intentions with respect to the paintings.
No, I was just 9 when she died.
Right. And you had no involvement with the probate of her will,
None.
and had no discussions at that time with any of the other family members regarding the will or Adela Bloch-Bauer's bequest of the Klimts. Is that correct?
Never.
Did you, at any time subsequent to the death of your aunt and prior to 1998, have discussion with any of your family members regarding Adela Bloch-Bauer's will?
No.
Did you ever have any discussions with any of the members of your family or Dr. Reinisch regarding Adela Bloch-Bauer's intentions with respect to the Klimt paintings at issue in
No,
this
I
lawsuit?
didn't.
When was the first time that you had such discussions with anyone?
The first time was when I, for the first time, saw the will, which was in 99.
And for clarity purposes, the will has been identified as Exhibit 12. Can I ask you to place that before the witness, please?
Mhm.
It says 13. Yes, yes, I know that very well.
Okay. The first time you saw Exhibit 12 was in 1999, is that
Yes.
correct? And how did you receive this document?
My niece, Nellie Auersberg, showed it to me when I went to Vancouver after my sister died.
Counsel, I'll cover it. May I draw your attention to the fax trail on what is the left margin of this document? As you
Yes.
turn it sideways, do you see that there's certain typewritten material at the top of that document?
Yes,
Okay. Now, do you see the name Zernin Molden
Janine, yes,
Czernin?
yes.
Excuse my pronunciation of
perfectly
all
all right.
European words. Is there a Mr. Czernin with whom you have spoken on matters relating to this lawsuit?
Mr. Janine is a very sick man. I saw him very briefly in Vienna.
Did you obtain certain documents from Mr. Czernin at some time in 1999?
Not directly. I got them through Mr. Schoenberg.
What's your understanding of how these documents came into your possession?
I don't get your question.
What do you understand about the circumstances under which Mr. Czernin sent these documents?
The circumstances were that in March, I think it was March, for the first time came the question whether this will was interpreted the way it was written, and so my relatives in Vancouver were called by Dr. Sturm, and then it just unfolded slowly that we got these papers that told us things that I wasn't aware of before.
To the best of your knowledge, Mr. Chernin was contacted, requested to send some documents, and these are among the documents that he
Correct.
sent? During March of 1998, when you were having the conversations with your relatives in Vancouver, do you recall whether your relatives had a copy of Adela Bloch-Bauer's will at that time?
You know, there was so much confusion. I don't think they did.
Okay. So, to the best of your recollection, the first time you saw Exhibit 12 would have been sometime in or about January of 1999 after receipt from Mr. Chernin?
That's correct.
And is the same true of Exhibit 13, the transcript of Adela Bloch-Bauer's will that you identified yesterday?
Yes.
And I take it from your testimony that you have no personal knowledge that would allow you to interpret the intention of Adela Bloch-Bauer as expressed in this document. Is that correct? And by this document, I mean Exhibit 12.
Objection, that's vague and compound.
You can answer the question, Mrs. Altmann.
Excuse me, if you wanted to know if I had personal knowledge of...
Anything that would allow you to help interpret the will, other
Well,
than what you've already
I
testified to.
I state my objection. It's a very vague
I can
question.
read the will, and it's perfectly clear. She's requesting her husband to leave the paintings after his death to the gallery.
Yes, ma'am. I was just wondering if you had any personal knowledge that gave you the ability to provide any special interpretation of those words.
No. I mean, I can read it and I understand what I read, but that's it.
Let me ask, please, for you to look at what was marked yesterday as Exhibit 11.
Yeah?
Now, I understand that this document has been identified as a document recording the death of Adela Bloch-Bauer.
Correct.
I understand you to have testified yesterday that this was one of the documents you received from Nellie Auersberg in early 1998.
Objection misstates the testimony yesterday.
Is that not your recollection?
I don't remember whether Nellie gave that to me. See, I remember that I went there after the death of my sister. I was there twice while she was dying, and then for the funeral. Then we sat together and she showed me some papers, but whether it was exactly at that time or whether I'm there every summer, so I don't know exactly when I saw that paper.
It is your recollection that you received this document, Exhibit 11, from Nellie Auersberg. By the way, how do I pronounce her name, please?
Pardon me?
How do I pronounce her name correctly?
You did perfect.
Fine, thank you. Did you receive this document at some time from Nellie Auersberg?
I saw it there, yes.
Okay. And you took a copy at that time?
Yeah, you know, there's so many papers that I have, boxes and boxes. I don't know exactly when I got this one, but I'm sure I got it at the time. I don't know.
Well, if you don't know, you should say you don't know.
And that's fine. Counsel, if you would like to, at any point in time, go off the record and engage in a colloquy with me, I'm happy to do that with respect to any document. I'm not looking to lead the witness into any error, as I think I was careful to point out earlier. I'm interested in her best testimony.
I have to admit that the second page, where it says about my grandfather, Moritz Bauer, I don't quite remember that I've seen that.
And I'll just state for the record, and pages where, especially the pages that have the fax number of Chernine on the top or bottom, very likely she saw those only after Mr. Chernine faxed them to us in January 1999. I think we went through most of the ones yesterday that I believe she had prior to us receiving documents from Mr. Chernine, and I don't think this is one of them. But
Fair enough. I don't, the copy I had doesn't have the fax line on it. And it was exactly that that caused me to understand. It may be a question of Xeroxing.
It probably is. If you look at the one I placed in front of the witness counsel, it has a little bit of a line left there.
Okay. So, Mrs. Altmann, you don't have a recollection when you first saw this document?
There were so many documents, and I try very hard to follow exactly saying when I got it. I know I've seen it, but I don't know exactly if it was through Mr. Schönberg or through, Mr. Chernine, or if I got it through my niece, but I think it's more Mr. Chernine than her, because I don't recall that I saw the actual will of Adele at the Auersbergs.
Fair enough.
I might not.
Would you turn to the last page of Exhibit 11, please?
To the last page?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
The signature on the left-hand
It's my father.
side of the document, that's what I thought. Could you just read that? Is that Gustav Blochbauer?
Gustav Blochbauer.
What are the words below it? The signature, that is.
Als Erbenmachthaber. My God, what a word.
You have to spell it for the
It's
reporter.
representative of the heir, isn't it? Yeah.
But you have to spell the German for the reporter, please.
Yeah.
Can you spell it? Erbenmachthaber? Can you?
I should spell it.
Yes.
Erbenmaufnehme. My God, what is
Where is that?
this?
No, where you were reading Erbenmachthaber, where is that?
Oh, this,
Yeah.
excuse me, I read the other one. Capital ERBENM, as in Mary, ACHTHABER.
Thank
A
you.
horrible language.
Your father was acting as the executor of the
Yes.
estate,
Yes,
and he also represented your uncle as his attorney before the court when your aunt's will was probated. Is that your
Yes.
understanding?
suppose so, yes.
Do you understand that your father held a position of trust with your uncle,
Yes, he did.
that your uncle relied on him for advice and counsel in legal matters?
In legal matters and matters of art, both.
And matters of?
Art, my father helped choose all those collections of my uncle.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. What was your father's background in art?
Pardon me?
Your father's background with respect to art?
By the time he was 60, I was 6. So I remember don't remember him working. He spent most of his time in art shops, galleries, and antique shops. He loved art and music. I don't remember him working.
And he advised your uncle in connection with
Yes,
your
my uncle
uncle's collection?
listened in everything, yes.
Are you aware of any circumstances where your father acted contrary to your uncle's interests in connection of with any of the matters in which he represented him?
Not at all.
Let me ask you to take a look at the document that was marked yesterday as Exhibit 15.
Okay, one moment.
Sorry.
Do you remember seeing this document yesterday?
I guess so. There were a lot of documents.
Yes, there were.
Uh, what would you like me to say about that?
I understand this document is a transcript of the probate proceedings in January 1926 of your Aunt Adela's estate.
Correct.
And is this among the documents, to the best of your knowledge, that were received from Mr. Chernin?
Yes.
And is the first time that you saw a copy of this document, to the best of your recollection, sometime in January of 1999?
Correct.
Would you draw your attention, please, to the first paragraph of text that appears on the first page of Exhibit 15, which is marked in the bottom right-hand corner 000024.
Yes, correct.
That paragraph appears in German in this document. Would you be kind enough, please, to tell me in English what that paragraph says to the best of your understanding?
I'm going to
Yes.
object to having her translate a long paragraph like that. I think, I mean, she can do it, but the paragraph's been translated, I think, and if it hasn't, you know, we'll have a translation made of it. But I'm not sure what relevance also it would have what her translation is. But I'll let her.
Yeah, I'm
read it.
actually not interested in her translation as a translation.
Okay.
And I have absolutely no objection to my reading into the record my understanding of what it says and then asking her whether she disagrees with it. I simply wanted to be able to engage in questioning regarding its substance, which I am only capable of doing in the English language.
Yeah. Why don't you read in the translation that you have?
I can translate it.
Okay, let her translate it if she wants to translate it. Go ahead. Go ahead.
It says that in the Klimt paintings are not mentioned in the Vermögensbekenntnis, in her personal ownings. The Klimt paintings are not mentioned. The widower, Mr. Ferdinand Blochbauer, residing at Elisabethstraße 18, represented by Gustav Blochbauer, declares that the Klimt paintings are his property. On the other hand, he says he'll be glad to fulfill the requests of his wife, though they do not have the character of an actual inheritance.
Let me tell you what I understand that last phrase says, and you can tell me whether whether you agree with this. It says that the widower of the testatrix, Mr. Ferdinand Blochbauer, industrialist of Vienna, Elisabethstraße 18, represented by Gustav Blochbauer, attorney at law at Vienna, Stubenbasti,
Yeah.
number 2, as the heirs representatives, declares to be the owner of the Klimt paintings. However, on the other hand, in a submission, he declares that he will fulfill the testatrix's requests, even if they should not have the binding character of a testamentary disposition.
No, not even. It says, though they do not have the, excuse me, I think there's a difference between even and though they do not have the forcing character of a
Testamentary disposition?
testamentary. Yeah.
Okay. When did you first become aware of that statement on your uncle's behalf with respect to the property?
In the early spring of '99.
And you were not aware prior to that time whether or not your uncle had made any written submission with respect to his intention regarding Adela Blockbauer's mention of the Klimt paintings in her will?
No. As a matter of fact, definitely no. He never did make a written remark to, in regard to the painting.
You understand that this is a written remark made on his behalf in the probate proceedings during January of 1926, correct?
Objection. You asked if Ferdinand had written anything, not whether his attorney had said or written anything.
Would you read back my question for the witness, please?
And you were not aware prior to that time whether or not your uncle had made any written submission with respect to his intention regarding Adele Blockbauer's mention of the Klimt paintings in her will?
No, I was not aware of it.
And you understand that this is a written statement made on behalf of your uncle by his attorney, your father, Gustav Blockbauer, correct?
Objection. What are you referring to now?
I don't know.
This
He's-
document the witness just read into the record.
I'm sorry. The document, the first page of Exhibit 15, you're testifying that that is written by Gustav Blockbauer, counsel?
I see the distinction you're making. Are you making a distinction when you say that you're not aware that your uncle ever made a statement with respect to your aunt's intentions in her will regarding the Klimts? Are you saying that this probate record is not a submission by Ferdinand Blockbauer, and therefore you're not aware that he ever made a statement with respect to this subject matter?
I'm going to object again. You're referring just to the first page now, which is a transcript of the handwritten comments of the court on the probate order, which is attached as the second and third page of Exhibit 15? Is
I
that what
object
you're
to your
asking?
characterization, and there's no evidence that that's what this document is.
Okay, well, the
Do you kn-
document came from your clients, and it's a transcript prepared by the Austrian government in the late 40s. But if you don't think it says what it says, I guess we can talk about it. But it's an ambiguous question because you're not clear whether you're referring to the first page or the second page or the third page.
We'll make it clear. Mrs. Altmann, do you have personal knowledge with respect to what this document is?
I beg your pardon?
Do you have any personal knowledge regarding this document other than what you've already testified to?
No.
You only know about this document that you received it from Mr. Chernin through your counsel,
Correct.
correct? And this document on its face, the words, which are all in German, the heading of this document, the first page
Yes.
of Exhibit 15,
Yes.
marked for identification purposes by your counsel in connection with the production of this document to us as 000024 on the lower right-hand corner. That's the page to which I'm making reference. Do you understand that?
001 24. Yes, that's the page.
Okay. And the heading on the top of this page, the first words below the fax transmission trail, identifying it as having come from Mr. Chernin. The printed words at the top line, what do those say?
This
Yes, ma'am.
Blochbauer Klimt paintings.
And
Klimt
below that?
Bilder. I beg your pardon?
And below that, the
And
words
below
below that.
that it says, this is Anlage paper in regard to the document of his Vermögensbekenntnis. The English language is so much easier. The acknowledgement of his belongings, Vermögensbekenntnis. The belongings, isn't it?
He's asking you to give your best translation of
Yeah, well,
Vermögensbekenntnis.
this is a transcript of his declaration of his ownings.
And is there a date under
And the
that?
date was January 7th of January 1926.
Okay, and the next
underneath
line?
that.
And it says handwritten remarks on page 1 of the original.
Okay. Now, do you understand that this is a document created by the probate court in the course of the probate proceedings of Adela Bloch-Bauer's will?
Objection. That misstates what the document is completely. You're saying it's a transcript of that, or that is what it is?
Read back the question, please, for the witness's benefit.
Now, do you understand that this is a document created by the probate court in the course of the probate proceedings of Adela Bloch-Bauer's will?
Objection again. It's unclear whether you're asking whether this is a transcript of the document you're asking about, or whether this is the actual document that was handwritten by the probate court. Which doesn't
Would you
make any
please
sense.
answer my question?
Yes. Would you mind repeating your question?
Would you read it back again for the witness, please?
Now, do you understand that this is a document created by the probate court in the course of the probate proceedings of Adela Bloch-Bauer's will?
Yes, of course. Yes, I can see that.
Okay.
I'm
And
going to move to strike the answer. That it's confusing and vague the way you've had it. Do you understand this actual page
Counsel,
is the
counsel,
document
you'll
of the
have an
probate
opportunity
court?
to redirect to the witness. This is
Would
not
you-
your witness at
Okay,
this
but
time.
you're misleading her completely.
That's preposterous.
Excuse me, I do not actually, I try very hard to understand what you want to say. This is all a very difficult legal language, which is even hard for me, though I speak German fluently, to understand. I'd like to find out what you want me to understand here.
All I've asked, Mrs. Altmann, is your understanding of what the document is.
You're asking her what this particular type document is, or what it is a transcript of, counsel?
I can translate this for you, but I really don't know. All I did translate for you that the Erbmachthaber, the person who is inheritor, declares that the Klimt paintings are his property.
Mrs. Altman is clearly not understanding your question. He's asking you,
Counsel,
do you know what this particular document is? This type document is not what it is a transcript of.
Counsel, please do not coach the witness in her responses.
Well, I mean,
the record couldn't be clearer what I said and what she said. That's why it's being taken down.
And that's why you're obviously misleading her, because the
I
answer
have
cannot possibly
seen
be
that
correct.
over and over, and all I know is that it says here the paintings are his property, sein Eigentum.
Yeah, can we take a break, please?
No. I'd like to finish this line of questioning. Mrs. Altmann,
Can you read back the question then and have her answer it again? Make sure.
Please stop interrupting. Mrs. Altmann, all I was asking was what you understood the document was. You've already answered that question, and I'm not looking for anything further on a pending question. Let me ask you this. Do you understand from this document that Ferdinand Bloch-Bauer expressed to the probate court in January of 1926. His intention to fulfill the request of Adela Blockbauer to give to the National Gallery the 6 Klimt paintings, even though her bequest in her will did not have a binding character of a testamentary disposition.
Objection. Can you clarify whether you're talking about Ferdinand Bloch-Bauer personally or through his attorney, Gustav Bloch-Bauer?
I'm not making that distinction, Mrs. Altmann.
Well, then I object to the question as vague and ambiguous.
Do you understand the question, Mrs. Altmann?
He says the Klimt paintings are his property. However, he says he will fulfill a wish if the moment comes. He never had the paintings anymore. He couldn't fulfill it even if he had wanted to.
Okay. We can take a break now if you'd like.
Okay, yeah, I would like to take a break.
Going off the record at 10:56 a.m.
Hours per A-U.
Going back on the record at 11:07 a.m.
Mrs. Altmann, during our brief break, your counsel and I had a conversation regarding Exhibit 15 and where your copy of this document comes from and something of its provenance. Let me see if I can ask you a couple of follow-up questions to make the record clearer with respect to your knowledge on this document. Other than understanding that this document was provided through your counsel by Mr. Chernin sometime in January 1999, do you have any personal knowledge regarding its provenance?
No.
And without asking you to interpret whether this is a transcript of the January 7, 1926 probate proceedings of your aunt's will, or whether it is itself a document created by the probate court. I'm not asking you to make that distinction. And I take it, by the way, that you don't know which this is, whether it's a
Exactly.
transcript or itself a court-created document.
Correct.
The only thing I was interested in making reference to this document in my prior questions was whether you were aware from this document of the statement attributed to your Uncle Ferdinand about which I was questioning you. And you are aware of the statement from this document, correct?
I was aware of it, but that's when I said that in his... Yes, I was aware of it, but it's meaningless because he didn't have the paintings.
Without regard to any interpretation you or I may place on this document today, this document is the only knowledge you have with respect to any statements your uncle made in connection with the probate of your Aunt Adele's will with respect to the Klimt paintings. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And you understand that, however one interprets this statement is attributed to your uncle, Ferdinand, in connection with those probate proceedings. Is that correct?
Objection. It calls for legal conclusion.
You can answer.
Would you repeat the question?
Do you have any, let me rephrase the question instead. Do you have any reason to doubt that your Uncle Ferdinand made the statement attributed to him on page 1 of Exhibit 15?
He made the statement in 23, but a lot changed until he died in 1945.
I believe the statement, at least this document, suggests it was dated January 7, 1926.
Yes.
You just said 23. Were you?
I'm sorry. I thought she died in 23, but I was confused with the 23 and 26.
Fair enough. Would you please put Exhibit 20 before the witness?
Certainly.
I don't believe that you were asked yesterday, and forgive me if I'm in error, when the first time you saw this document was. Do you recall when you first saw it?
I think, I mean, I couldn't swear on it, but I think I only saw it after my sister died, because she had all those papers there. I had none here.
So the best of your recollection is that it would have been sometime in or after March of 1998?
My sister died in, yeah, correct.
Your sister died in April of 98, is that correct?
Yes.
So either just before or just after her
No,
death?
after, not
After.
before.
And you, to the best of your recollection, received this document from Nellie Auersberg?
I do think so.
You do think so?
I do think so. You see that it's very difficult for me, though I have a good memory, to distinguish between the papers I received through Monica Meyer and Mr. Janine and the personal papers that I received from my niece.
Who was Monica Meyer?
I beg your pardon?
Who was Monica
I
Meyer?
think she worked for Director Frodel, if I recall. She was working for the gallery, wasn't she? I think so.
Okay. Can you tell me, to the best of your recollection, what role Monica Meyer had in connection with any of the records relating to this lawsuit?
She provided us with some written material, and I remember at the session in Vienna that Professor Bacher told me we did supply you with all necessary information, didn't we? And I said, yes, you sent all the papers to me. I mean, to Mr. Schoenberg.
And Monica Meyer was someone who
I
collected
met
some
her,
documents?
as I
Is that your
say, I met her at a dinner party, that was all. I never had more than two friendly social words with her.
Fair enough. Would you, let me ask you this first as a foundational question. Are you able to read the handwritten words that appear on what I think in what you have before you is the second page of Exhibit 20?
20, yes?
It's the page that's marked for identification purposes 000305.
Correct. I have it in front of me.
Are you able to read what's on that page?
Yes, I do.
You can read it.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. Between the difficulty of the handwriting, the copy, and the language differences, I find it virtually impossible to
I
read.
don't
so-
blame you.
So I appreciate that.
I believe, Mr. Cooper, I believe we provided in our
I
production.
mean, it's difficult for me, though I was born in Austria. It's difficult for me to read it, and
I've made a transcript of this. I think there's one or two words that were, for me at least, illegible, but I believe that's part of the production. Maybe very near the end, there's a. something
her
called a-
handwriting isn't the
can-
easiest
can-
either.
Hold on one second. There's something called a summary transcript of relevant documents, and I think it's included in that. I believe I also quoted it in a letter to Minister Guerra in July of 1999, and I think you have that also.
That's fine. I actually wasn't making any objection at all.
Yeah, I just-
The
if you
document
wanted-
is as it is.
If you want a
and
transcript.
No, I understand what it says.
Oh,
I
okay.
just said I can't read it.
Okay.
And I was wondering if the witness could. My understanding, Mrs. Altmann,
Yeah.
is that this is the last will and testament of Ferdinand Bloch-Bauer.
Correct.
Dated October 8, 1942.
Yes, he died a month later.
No, wait a second.
Excuse me.
I don't want you to draw conclusions or get ahead of me.
Yeah.
I do not have the understanding that this was his final will. I believe that I will be able to show you in a few minutes, and Mr. Schoenberg showed you yesterday, a will that is dated subsequent to this document. Okay, I actually just wanted to draw your attention to the primary bequest, as I understand it, in this document. I understand that the first sentence after the preamble saying, "of sound mind and memory, and without being forced, I dispose as follows in the event of my death." And then I understand the next sentence to say, "I appoint my niece, Louise Baroness Gutmann, née Bloch-Bauer, my universal inheritrix, and in case she is not able to accept the inheritance, I appoint her 2 children, Nellie and Franz, in equal shares." Is that approximately what it says, as you
Yes.
understand it?
That was the first will he wrote.
Okay. When did you first become aware that, at least as of October 1942, your uncle had made your sister Louise his primary heir?
I saw that later, much later. This thing, this letter I saw much later. I was familiar with the last will he wrote in before he died, a month before he died.
Let me ask the question a little differently. Were you aware prior to your uncle's death that at some point in time, apparently in 1942, he had made your sister Louise his primary heir?
No, I was not aware of that.
This will provided a bequest to you of 10,000 American dollars. Is that your understanding?
Yes, but I don't even recall when I saw that, because I was familiar with the second will.
I understand that. I'm just asking whether you had any understanding from October 1942 through the death of your uncle that at some point in time he had a will which made your sister Louise his sole primary heir and you are the recipient of a $10,000 bequest.
I was not aware of that.
Are you aware of any special relationship your uncle had with your sister Louise that might have caused him to declare her his universal heir at that time?
Yes, because my sister Louise was the only one among our siblings that was still in Europe at that time, so she had contact with him. I understand she visited him, but she was the only one there. The rest of us were in Canada and America.
Did you have contact with your uncle between the time that you left Austria in 1938 and the time that he died in 1945?
Only while I was in England, following my escape to England, and no more after I left for America at the beginning of the war.
Now, you testified yesterday that Dr. Reinisch was retained and entrusted by your uncle to recover your uncle's property after the war. Is that correct?
You're asking her personal knowledge other than what she learned from the documents?
Let me ask the question again. Thank you. Were you aware during the period after the war that your uncle had retained Dr. Reinisch to assist him in connection with the recovery of your uncle's property?
No, I was not really aware of that.
You're aware of that today through documents that have been
Yes.
presented to you in
Yes.
connection with this deposition, among other things?
Yes, but there was also another lawyer that he mentioned, this Novacek, that was supposed to bring his last instructions, but I never met him and I don't know anything about him.
You have no personal knowledge regarding Dr. Reinisch's representation of your uncle in the post-war period?
Well, as I said yesterday, Reinisch was a friend and lawyer of the family, so I had no reason to doubt that if he did work for him.
You had become familiar with Dr. Reinisch prior to your departure from Europe, is that correct?
Oh, I've known him since I was a child. He was the best friend of my brother Robert.
What do you know of his reputation in the Austrian legal community?
I couldn't tell you. He was a very decent man, but he was as a lawyer. I wouldn't know. I had no discussions with him in that way.
You had no understanding of his prominence in the Austrian legal community?
No.
You mentioned yesterday, briefly, that Dr. Reinisch had some involvement in assisting members of your family to escape from Austria. Would you please describe for me what his involvement was?
He tried to help my husband and me to get a passport, but it didn't work. He made an attempt to help us to leave, and it failed totally, but luckily they never found out. But what it actually was, I don't know. I do think that he tried to help us to get passports, but it never materialized.
I understood from someone that he also was involved in actually helping to transport members of the family in his personal car.
Oh, I think it was the mother of my sister-in-law, Robert's wife, Robert's first wife. He helped her mother to get out. But I wouldn't have known. I heard that only from seeing it on the paper. I didn't know. See, we were not in any contact then. My sister was in Yugoslavia, we were in England. Part of the others was in Canada. I wouldn't know.
After the war, your brother Robert was the family's representative in connection with efforts to obtain restitution of the family's property.
Correct.
Is that correct? Did he play any direct role while he was in Europe in matters relating to the sugar factory?
Well, he tried his best to recover some of the things that where they belonged to my uncle, but I don't know any details.
Did there come a time when your brother Robert actually took on any official role with respect to the business of the sugar factory after World War II?
I think my brother Poldy went there too and helped him.
Your brother?
Poldy.
Leopold.
Poldy.
Leopold.
P-O-L-D-I.
P-O-L-D-I.
Yeah.
But you're not aware whether Robert had any official role
I
with
don't
respect to
think he
the
got
company?
I don't think he accomplished a lot there.
Did
He
your
tried, but he failed quite a bit.
You mentioned that your brother Leopold also went to Europe and engaged in some efforts to obtain restitution
Yes.
of property.
Yes.
What do you know about his activities?
Not much, because actually from what there had been and what came out of it, it was just a fraction. So they both tried, but I really don't know the amount to which they accomplished anything.
Are you aware whether your brother Carl also was in Europe and engaged in some of the efforts to obtain restitution of the property
Yeah, I
after
guess
the war?
he tried to, yeah. See, at the time I was very busy. I had 3 little kids and worked, and so I wasn't involved much in these matters.
Did you correspond with your brother Carl at all after the war?
Oh, I saw him every year when I went to Vancouver, but we didn't correspond.
He wrote you no letters after the war regarding any matters pertaining to the efforts to obtain restitution of the property?
Not that I know of, because he wasn't even in the will of my uncle, Charles. And neither Charles nor Poldy were in the will of my uncle.
Neither of them wrote to you during the post-war period regarding any matters relating to the efforts to recover property?
No. Poldy never wrote, and Charles didn't write much either.
Do you understand that Charles is how you refer to your brother?
My oldest brother,
Yes.
yeah.
He's also referred to from time to time as Carl, is that
Well,
correct?
Karl was his actual German name, and then he changed it to Charles, like to have a translation of the name.
So is it best that I refer to him as Charles as opposed to Carl?
It's fine, whatever you
Okay.
prefer.
As long as we understand who it is I'm referring to, it's all right.
I understand it. It's
Okay.
fine. He also kept the name Blochbauer to spite the others that called themselves Bentley.
So he changed his first name to anglicize it and then kept his last name
Correct.
out of spite.
Yeah.
Okay. Charles, do you understand that Charles was involved in effecting the return of one of the Klimt paintings to the National Gallery at some point after World War II?
Can I object here? You're
I
asking
have
her.
no idea. I couldn't even tell you if I have no idea.
Okay. I was wondering whether you're asking her personal knowledge or something she may have gleaned from the documents, but I guess the answer speaks for
No,
itself.
I have no idea what
Okay.
he did, and
You mentioned yesterday that during the course of his activities in connection with the attempt to obtain restitution of
excuse me, his activities,
I'm
you're
sorry,
talking about Charles?
my question was too long. Let me start over. I'm now referring to Robert.
Oh, Robert, yeah.
In connection with Robert's activities after the war to obtain restitution of property to the family,
Mhm.
you mentioned that he communicated to you regarding his efforts by telephone and letter.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could tell me, to the best of your recollection, how often you had conversations
Not
with
much.
Robert by telephone.
Not much. See, at that time, the telephone was not as inexpensive as it is now. We didn't talk much.
Do you know what happened to the letters that Robert sent you during that time period?
What happened to the letters?
Yes, you testified that he communicated by telephone and in writing, by letter. And I'm wondering if you know what happened to the letters that he sent you.
Oh, I'm not a very good keeper of materials. I'm quite sure I haven't got one letter left of this.
Were you aware during that time period that Robert also was writing to your sister, Louise, regarding his activities in Europe on behalf of the family?
I'm going to object. Can you be a little more precise of what time period? Because for a portion of time after the war, Louise is in Yugoslavia, and then she moves to Israel and Canada.
Fair enough. Let me just ask, when did Robert first commence his activities on behalf of the family in the effort to obtain restitution?
I couldn't tell you exactly when. I do know that he tried to send packages to my sister to Yugoslavia with just food packages, care packages he called it. And the thing was far from my mind to be involved in all that, because I left it to him to try what he can do. I was not involved at all with it.
You don't recall when he started these activities?
Well, I'm sure he tried to start soon after my uncle passed away.
But you don't have any specific recollection?
No, I don't.
Were you aware whether your brother Robert was involved? Strike that. You mentioned that your brother Robert had acted for a time as the personal secretary to your Uncle Ferdinand.
Correct.
Can you describe for me the types of activities that Robert had in connection with that role?
I wish I'd known more about it, but I'm afraid I don't. He went to the office there, and the offices were also in the Elisabethstrasse, and he worked there, but you see, I was a girl of 16, 17, 18. The last thing in my interest was what type of work he did there. I couldn't tell you.
Perhaps then I can get your understanding of the type of position it was. Personal secretary can mean anything from a clerical position to a position of some responsibility or authority that goes beyond the kinds of things that one might think of as secretarial. Do you have a sense of what kind of role it was?
I don't think my uncle gave any big authority to Robert whatsoever. He was an incredibly forceful man, Robert wasn't. I think Robert was a little bit afraid of his uncle, and he was not a very strong person. And the work he did, I really couldn't tell you.
Okay. Well, I suspect that I know the answer to the next question I'm going to ask you based on that, but let me ask, please, that you take a look at what was marked yesterday as Exhibit 24.
Yes.
Do you know what this document is?
It's the last will of my Uncle Ferdinand in October 22nd, 1945.
May I see the document that you have?
Did I number incorrectly?
No, it's likely, as likely my fault as any. Okay, I have two numbers on this document. Let me ask for 23, please.
Okay. Let's see.
This says 24.
Yes, I understand. I think the error was in my transcription of this document.
I hope that's right because chronologically the 23 comes before 24, so I probably did it in that order.
Okay, no, that's the document I have in mind.
Okay.
Let me ask you what that document is, if you know.
It just names, it names some of the paintings that the top one, as a matter of fact, I received and sold it. The Schindler document with brook and bridge.
You received that document as part of the return of property to the family after the war?
Objection. Can you ask the question again or repeat the question? I'm not sure I heard it.
You received that document as part of the return of property
Sorry.
to the family?
My mistake. You received the painting, the Schindler painting, that's referenced as the first item on Exhibit 23 as part of the return of the family's property after the war?
Yes.
23.
It is 23, if I misspoke.
I don't remember any of the others.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Do you recall seeing this document before yesterday?
I'm sure I must have seen it, but I wouldn't remember.
Okay. I take it you have no personal knowledge regarding the creation of this document?
No.
And the handwriting on the bottom of this page...
The handwriting of my brother, Robert, and he says it's a copy of a letter to my uncle.
It says that this is a copy of a letter to Uncle Ferdinand?
Yes.
And below that, what does that say?
Gives a date, 28th of September 1945.
Do you know whether Robert was in Europe in September of 1945?
I know he was in Europe, but I couldn't tell you exactly if it was 1945.
When did he was no longer in your uncle's employ in 1945 as his personal
secretary? No, certainly
secretary?
not. My uncle died in November 45, and Robert was in Vancouver, Canada.
So you have no understanding of the circumstances under which Robert might have been creating a report for your uncle regarding any of this property?
Objection. To the extent you're suggesting that Robert created the report, it assumes a fact that's not in evidence. And probably never will be.
Well, let me ask this question first. Do you have any understanding from the face of this document whether this represents any portion of a report Robert created for your uncle?
I must tell you, this is very confusing here. It gives all sorts of names to whom the things were sold. The V-E-R-K means verkauft, and he names these people, so I really couldn't tell you.
So you have no way of telling what this document is from the contents of the document and the handwritten notation on the bottom from Robert?
No, all I remember is that it's one Schindler painting was returned to me. I got 2 Schindler paintings and sold them.
Okay. Now would you please put Exhibit 24 before the witness? And would you please, I know you did a moment ago, but would you please, just for the clarity of the record, identify again what Exhibit 24 is?
It's the last will of my uncle, written in October 22nd, 1945.
And would you turn to the second page of the document? Do you have an understanding of what that second page represents?
Second page, excuse me, it's just, you mean this?
Yes, ma'am. This is the page marked 000317.
Yeah, it just says it's a confirmation. 00317.
Yes.
It just says it's a confirmation of the court in Zurich that this is his last will.
And would you turn to the third page, please? 000318.
Yes.
And do you have an understanding of what that page
Yes, it says
consists
all
of?
former last wills are no longer no longer. I don't know the English word for ungültig. Are no longer in correct. That this is his last will, and he gives half of his last will to my sister, who was at that time in Yugoslavia, and a quarter to me and a quarter to Robert.
Is it your understanding that this is a typed description of what appears on the first page of Exhibit 24?
Correct. The first page is his handwriting, and the last page is the type.
And it's the best of your recollection that you received this document for the first time sometime after your uncle's death in
Yes.
November of 1945. Is that correct?
Yes.
And how soon after his death did you receive the copy of this document?
Well, I'm sure within weeks. I really couldn't tell you exactly when.
And did you ever learn the circumstances under which your Uncle Ferdinand changed the bequest that he left from the bequest set forth in Exhibit?
No, I don't know. You mean from his first will?
From his first will, Exhibit 20.
No, I guess he just changed his mind. But I
But
don't
you
know
never
why.
spoke to him about that?
No, I never spoke to him anymore.
And did any of the other members of your family ever speak to you regarding any information they had regarding his
No.
reasons for changing?
No.
You were aware that your brother Robert retained Dr. Reinisch after your Uncle Ferdinand's death in connection with matters relating to the will and the restitution of the property?
I was aware of it.
Were you also aware that your brother Robert gave to Dr. Reinisch your brother Robert's power of attorney in connection with those matters?
Yes, I learned that.
You're asking whether she was aware then or aware now?
Yes, the question was Mrs. Altmann aware then that he conferred the power of attorney on Dr. Reinisch?
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, we don't want you to guess.
Pardon?
Absolutely none of us want you to guess. Were you aware in 1940s that your brother Robert had given the power of attorney?
I had, as I said before, at the time I had small children, I had no time for anything, and was glad that my brother Robert acted on my behalf.
Okay.
Fair enough. Let me ask the court reporter to mark next in order, which I believe is Exhibit 56, a one-page document. Which is marked for identification purposes A0057.
So what number are we going to mark that then?
56, I believe.
56, okay.
I don't think I've ever seen this.
Please review that document.
I don't remember that I've seen that before. October 1945. No, this is the first time I see that.
This document is in German. Do you understand this document to appear to be a power of attorney by your brother Robert Bentley to Dr. Gustav Reinisch?
Yeah, this is correct, but I must say I haven't seen it before.
I'm going to object also. There's, again, an ambiguity in the question. I think this is a transcript of a power of attorney, not the actual power of attorney. I'm not sure the witness...
Yeah, it says Abschrift.
Are you aware during the time period in October 1945 that your brother executed such a document?
No, I was not aware of it.
Do you
I never
recall?
saw that before.
Do you recall ever executing such a document yourself?
No. I mean, I may have. You know, this is a long time ago, and I trusted my brother Robert. As I said, the last thing in my mind was handling business affairs at that time. So whatever he did was okay with me. But this one I hadn't seen before.
Okay. It's possible, I take it, that you had seen an original power of attorney executed by your brother in favor
It's
of
very
Dr. Reinisch.
possible.
I'm sorry, what was the question? You were talking about... Can you read back the question? I'm sorry.
It's possible, I take it, that you had seen an original power of attorney executed by your brother in favor of Dr. Reinisch. Answer, it's very possible.
Let me ask.
I don't
The-
think I actually, you mean I would have had to see this?
No,
No,
I-
I did not see that.
Yeah, I understood you to have said that you didn't recall whether you'd seen this document. I asked about the original power of attorney.
No, I don't remember that.
Okay. Let me ask that we have marked as next in order Exhibit 57, a one-page document bearing the identification number on the lower right-hand side.
This is 57.
sorry.
Yes,
The number at the
understood.
bottom of Exhibit 57 is A0057, but we're going to mark a next exhibit, exhibit number 57.
Oh, I
It's
see.
unfortunately confusing, nothing we can do about it.
And I'm about to add to the confusion, Mrs. Altmann, because the next document has, as its identification in the lower right-hand corner, the number A0058. And I ask that this document be marked as Exhibit 57.
Okay. We'll get one.
Here you are. Let me ask you first whether you recall seeing this document previously.
Well, I see it now, and I suppose I must have seen it before, but I can't remember it.
Okay. Does this refresh your recollection whether you executed during 1945 in favor of Dr. Reinisch a power of attorney?
I see it now, so I must have known about it, but I don't recall it.
Okay. Do you have any reason, as you sit here today, to doubt that you executed such a power of attorney in favor of Dr. Reinisch?
No, I mean, I must have given it, but I don't recall it. When was
Do you see the small bit? No, never mind. Do you recall an event in on the last day of December of 1945 in which you and your husband, Frederick Altmann, executed any documents before a notary public?
Well, you told me yesterday I have such a good memory, but I think it fails me right now. I see it here, but I don't recall it.
Okay. You have no reason to doubt that it occurred?
No.
This document indicates that you gave Dr. Reinisch authority to conduct legal proceedings on your behalf and empowered him to represent you in all matters relating to tax matters before courts, to institute lawsuits, and to do a wide variety of other legal acts on your behalf. Do you see that?
Yes.
Do you have any doubt that you conferred that authority on Dr. Reinisch at the end of December in 1945?
I was never in direct correspondence with Dr. Reinisch. I saw him years after the war for the first time when I visited Austria with my daughter.
But you have no doubt, as you sit here today, that you conferred that authority on Dr. Reinisch in or about the
Via
end of
my
December.
brother Robert, yes.
You have no doubt, that's correct?
That's correct.
Do you recall hearing of a meeting between your brother Robert and your sister Louise in Prague in 1948 to discuss your uncle's estate?
No idea.
You never heard of such a meeting having
Robert
occurred?
met Louisa in Prague. In what year?
In 1948 is the event to which I'm referring.
No, I have no idea. Never. 48.
Are you aware of your sister Louise are you aware of the degree to which your sister Louise communicated with your brother Robert regarding matters related to the Bloch-Bauer estate after 19... Let me rephrase that. When did Louise move from Czechoslovakia to Canada?
Louisa was never, excuse me, she was in Yugoslavia. She was not in Czechoslovakia.
My apology. When did she
She
move
became a widow. My brother-in-law was shot on my 30th birthday, which was February 1946. And then she had some, I would say, some horrible 2 years in Yugoslavia, but I would think that she left Yugoslavia 48, 49, I wouldn't know exactly. And I had no communication with her at the time. She was in Israel then for a short while, and then she came to Vancouver, Canada, with the help of my brother Pauli.
Once she returned, once she ended up residing in Vancouver.
Yeah, correct.
Did you communicate with her more frequently thereafter?
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay, and that was approximately when that she arrived in Vancouver?
That's the problem. It might easily be 49. I wouldn't know exactly. 49, 50. She was in Israel for several months, but I don't know exactly when she came to Vancouver.
Do you have any sense of whether Robert was able to communicate with her after the war in 1945 up to the time that she began residing in Vancouver in 1949?
I know he sent her care packages of food from Vancouver, but what business correspondence he had with her, I wouldn't know.
One of the documents that was identified yesterday was Exhibit 28. I'll just ask you to take a look at that again. I understand you to have testified yesterday that you had not seen this document until at or about the time of your sister Louise's death in early 1998. Is that correct?
Yes, it's definitely correct.
Do you recognize the handwriting in the upper left-hand corner of this document, the first page of which is 363?
No, this is neither Robert nor Louisa. I don't know that handwriting.
There's a reference there to from file, Louise's trip to Prague, 1948. Does that reference have any meaning to you?
No.
When you...
I don't know who underlined it. The letter is from Robert, but no, I'm sorry. Pardon me?
You mentioned that you received boxes of documents from Nellie Auersberg at some point in time. At least that's what I understood you to have said.
objection. There was no testimony about boxes.
I thought there was, but the record will speak for itself. I'm not trying to put words in the witness's mouth. I was actually merely wanting to put us back to the point.
After Louisa died, Nellie gave me some papers, but that I hadn't seen before. That's all.
Over the time period from the point in March of 1998, when you went to Vancouver to attend your sister Louise in her illness, until today,
Yes.
what's the volume of documentation that you've received from any of the family in Vancouver?
No, not that much.
Can you give me your best approximation of what the volume is in total?
It's very difficult because between the letters we were able to get through Janine and the documents that Nellie gave me, I mean, how would you want me to measure it?
Any way that's convenient for you. One way that I could think of would be in the thickness by inches, or if it's a very small amount of documentation, you could make a reference to any of the piles that are on the table. I'm trying to get a frame of reference. I take it was not
Well, you see,
several
my
boxes.
problem is that I don't know what exactly Nellie gave me and what were all these transcripts from Janine, Dr. Bach, and all these things. I would say from Nellie I didn't get that much. Most of it came.
Perhaps you gestured with your hand, perhaps 1.5 to 2 inches? I'm just getting a frame of reference. It doesn't matter.
Does it help you if it's 2 inches or 1.5? I
Doesn't
really
matter.
wouldn't know.
It's, in any case, it's not a full box.
No.
Okay. To the best of your knowledge, have all of the documents that you received from Nellie Auersberg been provided to me and the other counsel for the Republic of Austria and the National Gallery?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
Have we received copies of everything you received from Nellie?
I suppose so that you
Okay,
have.
but you don't know one way or the other?
No.
Okay.
I believe you've received copies of everything, and I'd previously sent your client copies of everything that we received from Nellie,
Okay.
including some of the photographs, for example, came from her.
But you're not
copies
aware of
this.
anything we don't have?
I'm not aware of anything.
Okay.
If I had anything else, you would see it, and I would see it, but I'm not aware of anything more. And I've asked repeatedly, I think I've told you that, Mrs. Auersberg, Dr. Auersberg.
She's a scientist and totally involved in her work.
Well, let me ask you exactly about your understanding of where these documents came from. Is it your understanding that the documents that you received from Nellie Auersberg were documents that her mother Louise had prior to her death?
I suppose so.
That's your understanding?
Yes, I suppose so.
Are you aware of what happened to Robert's records of the same type?
See, with the divorce of Robert, partly was left with his first wife, partly was left with the second wife, who was the most unorganized person I ever met. So I don't know what was where.
Have you made effort to obtain any records that Robert may have had?
No, I didn't. I left it all to my sister in Vancouver. She lived there and she...
He's asking, you're asking in the course of this litigation because...
Well, not necessarily in the course of this litigation, and I don't want to limit it to that. I wonder if at any time, before or after his death, you
Before,
tried...
after whose death?
Robert's. Let me try it.
Oh,
Let
excuse
me
me.
try it differently. Before or after Robert's death, at any time, did you attempt to obtain copies of any documents
No,
he
I
had
didn't.
that related in any way to the matters of your uncle's estate?
No, I didn't.
in connection with obtaining records for this lawsuit, are you aware whether efforts have been made to obtain any records that may still exist from Robert and his activities on behalf of your uncle's estate? That's a no?
No, I mean, nothing I recall was made until all these things popped up, so I don't remember.
Do you have any reason to believe that any of Robert's heirs or representatives would decline to provide copies of documents if they still existed?
His second wife, as I said before, was a nice but totally unorganized, messy person. His son, with whom Robert was not in tremendous good relationship, also I don't. I don't think that there's anything I can help you in that regard, because I don't think there is anything more than what you have.
Yeah, if I can interject, I've made inquiries. My understanding from Trevor Mantle, who is the heir of Robert's second wife, is that everything was thrown away. I asked Robert's first wife, and I believe you have copies of the letters that she sent me, that she still had from Robert from the 1950s time frame, and his son didn't have anything either. So we've made efforts. I've made efforts on Mrs. Altmann's behalf. And haven't come up with anything more than what you have.
What was the, forgive me if I'm asking you to repeat something you said yesterday, what was the name of Robert's first wife?
Thea, Thea.
And her last name?
Oh, her first time at the beginning it was Blochbauer. Her born maiden name was Stern. Stern, but then she was Blochbauer, and then she was Bentley.
Is she still alive, to your knowledge?
Yes, she's a couple of years younger than I am.
Do you know where she lives?
Yes, she lives on Pine Crescent in Vancouver.
Do you know her current address?
I think 3924 Pine Crescent.
Which is the same as the address in 1947 on Exhibit
Is
28.
it 3924?
Yeah.
I'm pretty good.
And the name again, please, of Robert's second wife?
Hilda, Hylda.
And are you also aware of her current address?
Oh, she died.
She died.
I should add, I also talked to the lawyer who did their estate, John Dobbin. You have all these records because I had to send them to Dr. Vron initially in 1999, and he also said that he didn't have anything.
We've been going for some time now. Why don't we take a short break here? Then what I would propose to do is that we go, let's take just a 5-minute break. Let's go then to about 12:30. We'll take a lunch break, and then we'll resume and hopefully conclude by mid-afternoon.
That's fine. That's
Okay.
fine.
Going off the record at 12:09 p.m. This is the end of videotape number